Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 561, and today's date is January 8th, 2015, and the title of this episode is Breaking Down the False Flag Event in Paris. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, we see out in the UK that manufacturing is pretty much imploding on itself. And this we're starting to see all around the private Western central bank countries. I mean, we're seeing it throughout Europe. We're seeing it here in the United States. Well, the United States really doesn't have manufacturing anymore. This was all shifted from the United States to other countries like China, and this was part of their plan. But we can see right now in the UK that the industrial production in the UK has dropped back to 1992 levels. France and Spain is no greater than it was in 1994, and in Italy, production has fallen back to 1987 levels. So we can see right now, Europe really is right in that depression. I mean, with the unemployment hitting between 20 and 40%, depending on which country you're looking at, and production so low, going all the way back to the 80s and the 90s, it looks like they are in a full-fledged depression. We also have to understand they have a huge amount of debt, and they have no way of getting out of it, and the governments are becoming desperate at this point. And this is why Greece is looking to get out of the central banking system. They want to write off all the debt. They want to say, you know what? We're going to do things now to benefit the people. Actually, they've been cozying up to Russia and China, making deals to spur economic growth in the country. And we see a lot of countries doing this. China and Russia have made deals all around the world, business deals, without using troops. And they're trying to spur economic growth. They're trying to bring in countries into the BRICS, into the Eurasian Union, and they're trying to grow the system. On the other hand, the United States, what are they doing? Well, they are using military force against everyone, saying you must use the dollar or we will hit you with terror. And we see this going on quite a bit. But the Syriza party, the opinion polls show that they are in the lead. We understand the elections are coming up. And again, the central bankers are out there and they are threatening Greece that they better do it the right way. They better put the right person into power. You better not leave the Eurozone system. You better not write off the debt, or there will be consequences. And we can see that this is going to be a changer here in Europe and across the world, and we're going to have to watch this very, very carefully. Now, here in the United States, what are we seeing? Well, we're seeing that the continuing claims for unemployment is dropping. The initial claims dropped about 4,000 on the week, but missed expectations, printing at 294,000. They expected about 290,000, and they just missed by about 4,000 or so. But what we're seeing right now is a lot of retail stores are closing. They're closing their doors, letting the part-time people go, and they do not count. A lot of people who are being laid off in corporations get severance packages. They don't have to apply for unemployment yet because they're receiving a dollar amount from the companies, where it will last, between 3, 6, 9 months, a year, depending on how long they work for the corporations. Now, layoffs are continuing. Retail store closures are continuing. Another store closure, Body Central. This is a mall-based clothing retailer, and basically they are going to be filing for bankruptcy. And they just don't have enough funds to keep operating. They have about 265 stores in about 28 states, and we're going to see a lot of people laid off. We're going to see store closings. We also understand that Coke, they're going to fire 1,800 people. Caterpillar is laying off 200. And what does this tell us? The economy is just not doing well. If we really look at Caterpillar, we see the last 24 months they had negative sales. During the Great Recession, the 19 months starting in 2008 or so, they only had 19 months of negative sales, and then they started growing, and then ever since 2011, they've been in this downward slide, and as soon as 2012 hit, guess what? Negative sales for 24 months. What does this tell you? The world, of course, the private Western Central Bank countries, they're the ones who are falling apart, and it is not getting better whatsoever because we're not seeing any type of improvement anywhere. Now, there are other companies that are laying off people. Standard Chartered International, about 4,000 employees. An update to Maximus. This is the Boise call center. They're laying off about 1,500 people. JCPenney is going to close 40 stores in 2015. I wouldn't be surprised by the end of 2015 if they close a lot more because it seems like they're pretty much done. Same with Radio Shack. Radio Shack is closing Woodland Distribution Center in March. A lot of people are going to be laid off there. Cinram Operations, formerly JVC America, is closing its Cottondale plant, about 100 layoffs. 66 stores for bottom dollar food, they are also closing. We also have reports of Samsung reporting that they have a 37% income fall. They are not doing well. So we can see that the economy, the real indicators, and I'm not talking about the manipulated numbers from the government, GDP, inflation, unemployment, because they can change those numbers. They can go back and recalculate them as we know they do. We are looking at what's really going on here. The people out there who don't have money in their savings, the people out there that don't have credit, the stores that are closing down because they cannot make it because the people are just tapped out. The Baltic Dry Index, guess what? It has fallen again 20 points. It's down from 744 to 724. This is raw material, which is shipped to different countries for factory production. This is a very good indicator of how manufacturing is doing because this cannot be manipulated in a way that other statistical numbers can be manipulated. It's also immune to speculators, and we can see right now from manufacturing all across the world, it is not doing well whatsoever. Now, Obama is out there, and he's trying to explain how the FHA's 3% down mortgages is going to be great for America. And like I always say, every time a government official is out there telling you something, it is always the opposite. It is not going to be good for America. They told us Obamacare is going to be fantastic for America. It's going to be very inexpensive health insurance, and it's going to benefit the people. But what have we been seeing? First of all, the Affordable Care Act is expensive, and it does not give benefits to the people, and we understand the government, just kind of exempted themselves from it, from the entire program. Now, we understand that this new program is going to allow bad creditors to buy houses again with only about 3% down. House Financial Services Committee Chairman Jeb Hensarling explained that he is extremely concerned about this new program. He's saying that taxpayers to back high-risk mortgages with ultra-low down payments, this plan should not go forward. He's saying that this plan should be rejected. It doesn't sound good for the real estate market. He's referring back to 2007, 2008, when we had the subprime problem, when people were getting mortgages. Whoever had a heartbeat went in, zero down. They had ARMs, adjustable rate mortgages. They went in with no money into the home, so they had nothing there. They just left their homes when the entire system crashed down. Interest rates went up. He's saying that we're going to see the same exact thing once again. And this is not a good direction and will not be beneficial for our economy and overall housing market. And I completely agree with him. Yes, we will see a boost of mortgage applications during this time period because everyone's going to jump on the bandwagon and say, oh, I can purchase a house. I only have a part-time job, or I only have this. I can spread my mortgage payments out over 40 months, 40 years, 50 years, and my payments will only be this. I can get an adjustable rate mortgage where it's only at, 2%. This is fantastic. And guess what's going to happen? Eventually, when this whole thing comes tumbling down and the rates go right back up and they lose their job, the same thing's going to happen like it did in 2007, 2008, and we're going to be in the same exact area. So we might see a bump up in the first or second quarter in mortgage applications and sales and homes, but eventually what's going to happen, this will die off once again, and the real estate market will start falling apart because a lot of people will not be able to make their payments, just like we've seen in the auto industry where these people are coming in and they're accepting subprime people, and we see the delinquency delinquency rate of automobile loans at 80% right now, and we're going to see the same thing happen in housing. What's happening here is the central bankers, the U.S. government, they're doing everything they possibly can to pump the system up. They're not ready for the event yet. They've been preparing for it. They've been brainwashing the people with what's going on around the world with all these lone wolf attacks. And we talked about this previously, going back like a year, that this was going to happen. And we see it happening right now because they're brainwashing you for the major event. They're saying, look, it's getting worse. It went from Canada, then to Australia, now to Paris. It could be UK next time, or Spain, and then eventually it will hit here in the United States. But this will be the big one. This will be the big event, and they're building up to this. Now, there's a political economist out there saying that the president is misinformed about the state of the Russian economy, arguing that the country is not as dependent on oil and gas as the West claims. Obama took credit for the decline in the value of the Russian currency. Well, wait a minute. I thought he had nothing to do with the lower oil prices. He's trying to convince us that these sanctions were the cause of this, and we know they weren't because the sanctions were already in place. So he's kind of admitting that he's behind all of this. Putin's policies, Obama said, have not so smart since sanctions have proved devastating to the Russian economy. Well, no, they really aren't. The President of the United States is misinformed about the economy of Russia, and this is coming from John Helvig. The U.S. President thinks that Russia doesn't produce anything and it only lives off the oil and gas, which is completely not true whatsoever. It's true that gas and oil are important there, but very important for the Russian economy and brings prosperity. But in 2013, oil and gas only made up 16% of their GDP. The rest was manufacturing. So Russia has a lot of economic life beyond oil and gas. He went on to say that the drop value of the ruble is in no way a catastrophe for the Russian economy. Unemployment rate there is at 5%. Where did these people work? They work in a lot of sectors of the economy, and they are producing right now. And again, Russia is part of the BRICS system. They're making deals with Argentina, with Iran, with North Korea, with China, with India, and many other nations. And they're producing, making business deals. They're even going into Africa at this point, and we can see this is continuing and ongoing as time goes on. Now, North Korea is out there, and they are saying that they want the sanctions imposed by the United States to be stopped. They're saying we had nothing to do with the cyber attack to Sony Pictures. The United States government, the FBI, has absolutely no proof that it was us, and it was not us, and there's no reason for these sanctions, and they are taking a stand saying that they need to remove them. Now, we understand the government, the United States government, the FBI, is continually out there saying that they have new proof, that the hackers left clues because they were sloppy. They're doing everything they possibly can to keep the story going because there's a lot of cybersecurity firms out there, forensic analysis on the situation, and they're reporting back that no, North Korea had absolutely nothing to do with this, but the FBI, the U.S. government, will never admit when they're wrong because, again, they just take one lie, put another lie on top of that, another lie on top of that, and they'll continue with the story. They really don't care. They did this with Ukraine when the MH17 fighter airplane was shot down. They just put out a story that it was Russia. They never admitted that it wasn't Russia. The story just went away. They said, oh, maybe, yeah, well, it was Russia, but now it looks like it might be just the southeastern people because they had no proof. And Russia was calling them on this. Where's the proof? Let's see the satellite imagery. Let's see the communications between the air traffic tower and the fighter jet or the missile system or anything that was going on. NATO, United States, they couldn't give any proof. And with Ukraine, what did we see? Well, we saw the documentation that they gave over was classified. Why would they classify this? What are they hiding? What are they afraid of? And they formed a little group to keep all the information quiet about the entire situation. So we can see right now this whole cyber attack in North Korea, as it fits with all the other propaganda, is a complete lie. It is propaganda to build up to the next war, to demonize these countries, to make sure the people here in the United States and other places understand these are the countries we'll be going to war with, and this is exactly what they're doing. Now, the IMF, they are going to provide financial assistance to Ukraine, which is on the brink of default. They're completely collapsing right now. The IMF estimates Kiev needs an extra $15 billion of aid to overcome the crisis. The IMF is expected to hold a number of consultations with Ukrainian authorities by the end of January. Earlier, it approved the allocation of about $17 billion to Ukraine in order to stabilize the budget amid political and economic crisis. Kiev has already received $4.6 billion, the first tranche of about $3.2 billion in May, and the second of about $1.4 billion in early September, and that was back in 2014. The allocation of the next tranche depends on how the Ukrainian authorities will impose austerity on the people and stabilize the country using different types of programs. And we've seen this before in Cyprus, in Greece, in France, in Italy, in Spain. It doesn't work. It puts the country further and further into debt. They will never be able to survive. There's no manufacturing. There's no production there. And we can see right now they're getting further and further into debt. Kiev's public debt is growing at a pace much faster than the IMF expected, of course, because they're always wrong in their analysis of what is really going on. The sovereign debt of Ukraine could reach 90% of GDP in 2015, and we can see right now that this whole entire system is completely falling apart. In Ukraine, they're collapsing, and this is why they have to bring more and more debt. And believe me, without the southeastern section and Crimea, the entire country is going to go nowhere, and this is why they're building up military forces. The European Union proposed on Thursday offering an additional 1.8 billion euros to help save Ukraine from bankruptcy, as Kiev assured Germany it had credible plans to modernize. Europe stands united behind Ukraine. This is coming from the President Jean-Claude Juncker. Much will depend on the fund views, the details of Ukraine's budget, and a series of austerity laws, including amendments that would impose extra duties on imports and austerity on the people. And we've seen this time and time again. Now, Yatsenyuk is out there, and he is inviting Europe to invest in Ukraine's gas transportation system. And we have to remember, this whole entire system was created, planned by the United States government, the EU, to take over Ukraine and bring in the central bankers into the country. Biden, Kerry, they have friends, actually Biden's son, on the board of directors of these gas companies, and we can see right now they are ready to have investors come in. Ukraine Prime Minister Yatsenyuk called on European investors Thursday to invest in Ukraine's gas transportation system. I would like to call on European enterprises to invest. Under Ukrainian legislation, they are allowed to invest and purchase up to 49% share in our gas transportation system. Now, Russia has raised concerns about this because Ukraine's gas transportation rules, saying they run contrary to the World Trade Organization principles, plus they will not allow Russia to invest in the gas transportation system. How interesting. And we know for a fact this was all planned. People were put into place. We have bankers now in parliament in Ukraine. All of this has been taken over by the central bankers, and they control the country. And again, they do not like that they don't have the entire country, because what they wanted for a strategic location, plus they wanted the ports in the Black Sea, they wanted Crimea, and they wanted the production of the coal in the southeastern regions, and they have none of this, and they will not stop until they get the rest of the country. Now, we understand Cyber Bukut, they hacked into Germany's website. They retrieved some information when Biden was visiting, and Yatsenyuk is out there saying, no. You know who this was? It was Russia. Ukraine's prime minister said Russia intelligence on Thursday hacked into the German government websites. They're the ones who did it. So they're already starting the propaganda up because, as we know, they want this war to go forward. Now, Donetsk Republic military, they're saying that Ukraine's forthcoming wave of mobilization is a provocation against civilians. Ukraine's defense minister Stephen Poltorak declared the Ukraine might mobilize up to 104,000 men this year. This is a fresh confirmation of their vision of the solution of the problem in Donbass. And we can see right now everything is being put into place. They're getting ready for a major offensive. We already have documentation that they're receiving cluster bombs, which is against international law to use this type of weapon. We also understand they're bringing in other lethal weapons from the United States. They are preparing, they are training, and they're using this period to build their forces. And eventually what they'll do is they'll try to create a false flag event saying that Russia and the southeastern people attacked, and this is why we're attacking back. Now, Russia is going to lease about 12 Su-24 attack aircraft to Argentina, and they're going to do a barter trade. Argentina is going to give them food, and Russia is going to give them fighter jets. The aircraft, which Moscow will swap for beef and wheat, would be able to mount air patrols over Port Stanley. President Putin's visit to Argentina in July laid the groundwork for this. The deal involves a lease of the 12 Su-24 supersonic all-weather attack aircraft. So we can see already Russia is making deals. They're surviving, just like every other country that has sanctions on them. They always seem to overcome them. And we have to go back to what President Obama said when he was saying that we're removing some of the sanctions and we're having talks with Cuba because, as we've seen over 50 years, sanctions just don't work. But again, he's talking out of two sides of his mouth. He's saying sanctions don't work, but he's playing and he's placing sanctions on North Korea, Iran, Syria, Russia, and he's trying to tell everyone, Venezuela, that sanctions don't work while they're placing sanctions on other countries. So it really doesn't make sense. And this is why we always have to look at the actions of the government officials, not what comes out of their mouth, because whatever comes out of their mouth is a lie. We have to see exactly what they're doing. Now, there's a new Russian advanced stealth submarine dubbed Black Hole by NATO for its ability to be undetectable and has begun preparation for deep water tests. The sub carries about 533 mm torpedoes and 8 surface-to-air missiles, in addition to a new caliber land attack cruise missile complex. The United States, they are consolidating all their bases in Europe. The U.S. Air Force will base the first F-35 Joint Strike Fighter Group in Europe at Royal Air Force Station Lakenheath in the United Kingdom. The U.S. Air Force will permanently base the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, and about 1,200 personnel are scheduled to arrive at RAF in 2020 as part of a consolidation and restructuring of U.S. forces across Europe. And basically what they're doing, they're preparing and getting ready for war. They're restructuring, moving some of the military out. They don't have the budget for it. They're moving NATO into these sections. They're bringing in a lot of military assets into this area, and we can see that they are preparing and prepping for what is going on here. Now, out in the Middle East, we understand that things are getting worse and worse. Libya, the people are rising up there. Yemen, the same thing's happening. Iraq, Lebanon, and we can see right now they were trying to have peace talks at the UN, and the peace process for Libya is kind of dead, and it is really not going anywhere. The third proposal of a planned peace talks, which was due in January 5th, went nowhere. 3 meetings were held, the last attended by UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, in the hope that the parliament itself would be the forum for resolving a worsening civil war. The talks got nowhere, hampered by the failure to include key military leaders from both sides. And basically, they're out there saying we are running out of time, we're running out of ideas. If in the coming weeks it is not possible to revive this political dialogue, the international community should think of other formulas and speak in a different language in Libya. Okay, what does that mean? Speak in a different language. Basically what they're saying is they're going to mount an offensive and go into Libya. And we can see they've been prepping for this. They're getting ready for this. They have bases already outside of Libya. France is prepared. The United States is prepared. Everything is getting ready to go into Libya because they realize once these people there capture all the oil fields, the ports, and they try to sell oil, not using the dollar, this is when they're going in, and we're getting closer and closer to this time period. Now, out of the Washington Times, they're using propaganda to convince us that Assad is a crazy man. And they're out there saying that Syria President Assad reportedly has a new weapon at his disposal. A platoon of loyal soldiers with the special mission of suicide bombing. Now think about it. Everything that Assad has done, do you really think this is a tactic that he would use? I mean, he gave up his chemical weapons. He is trying to have peace talks, but now he's coming up with suicide bombers. How is this going to work with the people in Syria? I mean, really think about what they're trying to tell us here. And they also told us that he used chlorine gas. They also told us that he committed war crimes. And of course they showed pictures of people in hospital, but not exactly who actually did it, just the after effects of people who were hurt. So that doesn't mean that he did it. And this is what they always do. They showed pictures of those people who were hit with the sarin gas, with the chlorine gas. They never showed the facts, the evidence of who actually did it. And we can see right now they're using this because what's happening now is the opposite is happening. The Islamic State is using suicide bomber teams and they're killing innocent people. The same thing happened when they reported that Assad uses sarin gas. It was actually the Free Syrian Rebels. And we see the same thing with the chlorine gas, that Assad's using chlorine gas. No, it was actually the Islamic State. So every time they bring up a story like this, it is always the opposite. They're trying to cover up what's really going on because, as we know, the Islamic State is the proxy army for the United States, UK, Israel, and the other nations. And we can see right now this is exactly what they're doing, and they're building up the story about what is going on. Now, as we know, they need us to believe that the Islamic State, North Korea, Iran, Syria, China, Russia, you name it, all of these groups and countries, they will be cyber attacking the United States. And right now the FBI is investigating a group dubbed the Cyber Caliphate after it allegedly hacked websites and social media accounts belonging to a local Maryland television station. Although no one has been identified in connection with the hack squad, the group claims to be part of the Islamic State and says it's planning a series of cyber attacks on corporations, financial institutions, homes, offices, you name it, we're going to be hitting it. Hackers have targeted major media outlets like the New York Times and the Washington Post, but the latest attacks on Tuesday hit local television stations. So right now, they're building up the propaganda. They need us to believe that there's going to be lone wolf attacks here in the United States, and we can see this is going to be coupled with cyber attacks from North Korea, China, Russia, who knows, the Syrian Electronic Army, which we know is not really real. Actually, none of this is going to be real. It's going to be from the inside. Just like everything else that we've been seeing, it will be planned to the T to convince everyone that, yes, it was another country or group. Now, as we know, the corporate media, the governments, they're all out there, and they're keeping this in front of everyone because they want everyone to understand and basically be brainwashed that, yes, see, lone wolf attacks are happening. It happened in Paris. It just happened in Australia. Before that, it happened in Canada, and it is spreading now. The lone wolves are all over the place, and we can't stop them. And we look at this, and we see that the UK now, they're going to increase their border control at ports in light of this. They put their terror level up to severe. They're going to add an extra police officer and they're going to send it to the UK's counter-terror unit in station in Paris. While there has been no direct request from the French, they're going to just get prepared just in case they do ask for any help whatsoever. Now, the security alert in France is at the highest level at this point in northern France. And of course, they're still searching for the people. Maybe at the time of this broadcast, they might have found them. But again, the terror alert is very high. They want all eyes on this. They're keeping it in front of everyone. And we just have to kind of break down what happened in this entire situation. Now, I went a little through it yesterday, but let's bring in some more facts and let's go through what actually happened. Now, shooters were radicalized in Europe, then sent to Syria, and then they returned. So they're already making the case that terrorists are coming out of Syria. And they've been previously arrested by Western security agencies for terrorism and long on the watch list of the French and other Western intelligence agencies. Yet somehow they still managed to execute a highly organized attack in the heart of Europe. The suspects are two brothers, and it's Saeed, 34, and Sharaf Karachi, 32, both French nationals, and Hamid Murad of 18. In the recent attack in Paris, France, the canards of free speech, condemning radical Islam, tolerance, and extremism have all taken the center stage that, these people will not remove our freedoms. We will be a free people. We will stand. And they're trying to get everyone on board, and they want everyone to believe that they're taking away our freedoms, and this is why we have to go after these people. No, this is not what's happening. They plan this. They know exactly what they're doing. They want us to go to war. They want us to get angry and pissed off. They want us to believe that the Muslims of the world are dangerous and they're scary. Think about this for a second. They're using a small set to convince everyone that everyone is like this. And we've seen this before many, many times in history. Now, the fact is, the terrorists who carried out the attack were long on the leash not of Islamic extremists, but Western intelligence agency fighting in a Western proxy war. As a member of a well-funded, armed and trained mercenary force that has on record since as early as 2007 been an essential component of Western foreign policy. They were trained by the United States, CIA, Mossad, UK, to fight in the Syrian war. So they were under the control of these countries, the CIA, MI6, or whoever else was out there. Now here's fact one. Students say suspected getaway driver Murad Hamid was in class at the time of the attack, and they started to tweet this. Classmates of an 18-year-old accused of being the getaway driver saying, well, how could he be the getaway driver? He was in class during this time. We see him. He's sitting right here. So something already doesn't make sense. And he turned himself in, not understanding what was going on. Why was his name out there when he was in class? So again, this is fact number one. Something is terribly wrong here. Fact number two. Total population control. That's what they're doing right now. Think about this. Let's believe the story that this is really terrorism. Let's believe the government story that, it's the Muslims. They're from Yemen. They're Al-Qaeda. They're the Islamic State. Whatever they want to be. They're terrorists. Basically, all of this global surveillance from the NSA and all the other agencies didn't work. Everything they told us didn't work. They couldn't stop it, if we believe their story. But we all know that this is not what really happened. But for those people out there who are believing this, all of this surveillance, all this spying, didn't do a thing. The global dragnet surveillance by the world's most powerful intelligence agencies did nothing to stop the three Al-Qaeda linked gunmen from shooting 12 people dead at the offices of the French magazine Charlie Hebdo. So if you believe it, we can look at it the opposite way, where the surveillance does not work. So all of this they put in place and all the rights they're taking away from the people and the rights of privacy, it just didn't work. Fact number three. This was completely planned. We're told that the main office of the Charlie Hebdo was attacked within 2 hours after they posted an image depicting Baghdadi. Here's the tweet that they posted. It was a cartoon, and there was a little saying there, and it looked like Baghdadi. And basically what the cartoon, the message, I translated in Google Translate, and it said something like this: "Greetings from Baghdadi. Also to your health." I mean, that was the crude translation from Google. So what was so dangerous about this? Nothing. There appears to be a social marketing campaign attached to this event, conjuring the dreadful U.S. State Department propaganda seen in Coney 2012 and more recently Boko Haram. Within an hour of the shooting news breaking, there are already tweets that are trending, signs that were printed. How could this be? How did they get out there and hand out all these printed signs with hashtag JESUIS Charlie? How could this be? I mean, how does this just happen within an hour? It's amazing, unless this was a setup. Normally when you see printed signs like this come out right as soon as it starts, and all of a sudden that hashtag symbol is trending, we know that this was a setup. 2 shooters wearing black masks, outfitted in paramilitary gear, were seen entering the well-known magazine headquarters wielding AKs and other weaponry, with witnesses reporting several rounds being fired and entering Charlie Hebdo's offices. Masked gunmen, 2 masked assailants seen shooting at police following their planned attack at the Charlie Hebdo. Footage outside was captured by a timely videographer. So they just happened to be there, and they caught this on tape. And you see them being shot down. They shot down this police officer, and I believe he was Muslim. And they went by, and they actually shot him in the head as they ran by this person. Now, these people spoke perfect French, and they claimed they were Al-Qaeda from Yemen. So something just doesn't seem right now. They were also informed when the editorial meeting was going to be taking place, so there had to be someone in the inside informing them about this, about when all this was about to happen. Now, this entire false flag event has at least 3 NATO Operation Gladio signatures. Now, let's go through them. Number 1, the Daily Telegraph put it, the attackers displayed a degree of skill and calmness that comes only from advanced military training. 2, the political aspect here, with much of the sensible French military and political class who are against French involvement in NATO operations against the Islamic State in Syria and the countering of the Russian Black Sea Fleet in the Eastern Mediterranean. We also have to understand the president was also out there saying that they should do away with the sanctions with Russia. We also have to understand that France recognizes the Palestinian state. Number 3, the political shock effect of killing police officers. Armed anti-terror police were notable by their absence. Instead, poor unarmed men were sent to tackle the gunmen. Now, they identified these men. Now, they're stating that these men were dressed in black, had masks on, but they were walking around with their wallets and their IDs, and they just dropped them, and they found them, and they were able to identify who they were. I mean, seriously? This is what they're trying to throw it at us to make us believe this? This reminds me of 9/11, where they said, oh, the towers came down, everything is on fire, burnt, smashed, and they found their passports in perfect condition. They're using the same playbook. There's nothing new here. Another interesting thing, it seems that foreign minister reportedly met a high-ranking Arab person in Paris with Mossad agents. Very interesting. France has very strict gun laws, but these men carried weapons that the police didn't even have. And when we talked about that video of that man that was shot down in the street, one of the terrorists, or one of the trained men who were part of this false flag event, ran by him, shot him in the head, but there is absolutely no blood anywhere. This was point blank range with an AK-47. What do you think this does to the person's head? Now, even if he missed, we would have seen that shot hit the sidewalk. But guess what? No blood, nothing. Dust just blew around. Very interesting. Now, what's even more interesting is that there is a poll out there now, and this was taken by the Washington Examiner, saying that 74% of the likely voters say that they fear terrorists affiliated with the Islamic State will mount a catastrophic strike on the U.S. targets. They also think the terrorists will go beyond the French assault on Charlie Hebdo magazine. And this survey was commissioned by McLaughlin and Associates Survey. So they already have the people where they want them. 74% are expecting something very big, something catastrophic. They're getting them ready. They understand now that, yes, this will hit. We will have to go to war. This is what the central bankers, U.S. government, have been pushing for. They want everyone in the world to be convinced that we need to go to war once this hits. Now, what's even more interesting is that the House passed the terror insurance program. The House passed long-sought legislation Wednesday to renew the federal program that props up the private market for insurance against terrorist attacks. The legislation would decrease the government's exposure by gradually increasing the trigger amount from $100 million to $200 million if there were some type of attack here in the United States. We already see the bankers have protected themselves with the FDIC covering their derivative collapse. We can see right now they are prepared. They are ready. They are building up the event. They're getting ready to push their agenda forward because they understand the economy is collapsing. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.